Welcome everyone to the third webinar of the month on smart home and tech. Everything this month is generously sponsored by Control 4. Today's session is called What Does Smart Home Mean for the Kitchen and Bath Consumer? And Jonathan Bradley, who is the product manager of Smart Home Kitchen and Bath of Kohler Company, is with us, and his associate is also with us, Kevin Anderson, to answer your questions. Jonathan, we're ready to get started. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, everybody, for joining us this morning. Like Debbie said, I'm Jonathan Bradley, the product manager at Kohler Company for our emerging categories, which include smart home and any new areas we want to venture into. So really the intersection between Kohler's traditional product line and then whatever is new coming from a technology standpoint or otherwise. We're going to talk about smart home today. Like Debbie mentioned, Kevin Anderson is also on the line with me, my co-host. He'll be in the chat. If you have any questions as we go through, please send those into the chat. Kevin will answer any of the softballs live, and then he'll throw those fast pitches at me towards the end of the presentation and make sure everybody understands the question. I'm able to answer it as best as possible. Without further ado, like Debbie said, I'm going to jump right in. I got lots of content I want to cover with the group today. So everyone understands and walks away with a better understanding of smart home in general, as well as smart home in the kitchen and bath. We'll go through three main chapters. We'll talk about some of the larger trends that are happening in the industry, related to kitchen and bath, but just general smart home as well. We'll talk about the changing consumer expectation, and then we'll dive into the smart spaces, so bathroom, kitchen, and whole home. And like you mentioned there at the end, we'll answer any questions that might have arose throughout the presentation. But to kick us off, I want to start kind of foundationally in terms of what the definition of home is, or really kind of the changing definition of home over the last 12 to 18 months. Home is no longer just a place you come to after work to have dinner. It's now a home office, it's a gym, it's a daycare, it's a place of relaxation and retreat. So it's pulling multiple duties now. And right now you're actually sitting in my living room because it's my home office, right? So the definition of home has changed over this past year, and that's made us think differently about the smart home as well. And the definition of smart home has changed. Smart home needs to be able to adapt to the new needs of the consumer. It's a very dynamic space now as we transition throughout different rooms of the home, and they're all pulling double duty. So the smart home really needs to adapt as well. And over the last decade, we've really seen that transition from these fully built out interconnected spaces to really these modular a la carte solutions that consumers have gravitated towards now. And we'll talk through some of that as we go through the presentation. And we'll start here at what I call the macro trends. So we're going to focus on 6 trends as I click through this slide. And these are things that are happening, like I said, in the entire world as it relates to smart home, not just kitchen and bath, but you'll see the nuggets of information that are impactful to kitchen and bath as well. The first one is this idea of quiet and helpful interfaces. So calm technology that is out of sight, out of mind, and working really in the background to provide a solution, but isn't overwhelming. I mean, all of us have several screens in front of us all day long. I have 2 cell phones. I have 3 computer screens. We're inundated with technology. And I'm a firm believer, and so is the industry, that technology should be out of sight, out of mind whenever possible. And that's the idea of calm technology. And you can imagine the importance of that, especially in the bathroom, where the bathroom is a place of respite, relaxation, and retreat. And we don't want technology to overcome that experience. The second trend is data minimalism. So the opposite of that is data maximalism, right? So a decade or so ago, companies were collecting every bit of data on you possible with no real idea of what the return was for that data, but they were collecting it, hoping to monetize it or turn it into a revenue stream in the future. And consumers have essentially raised their hand and said, I'm not okay with that. I want you only to collect the data that is most impactful to deliver the experience, and that's it. Don't collect anything else. It's my data. It's important to me that it's kept private and secure. And that's this shift towards data minimalism, where you see regulations like GDPR and CCPA. It's a California regulation and a European regulation regulating the use of data by companies, essentially saying if you don't have a strong business case for the data, you can't collect it. So that's this shift towards data minimalism. Again, super impactful in the kitchen and bathroom. Trusted clean, right? So No surprise here in terms of the push for clean as it relates to the kitchen space and bathroom and whole home. And this means a couple of different things as it relates to our spaces specifically. It means clean products and clean surfaces, right? So making sure the area itself is clean, but making sure you as a consumer gets as clean as possible while you're using the products, whether that's washing your hands in a touchless faucet, using a bidet, using touchless flush technology. So this idea of trusted clean, making sure that you and the environment are both as clean as possible. The fourth one, digital health, right? So this is one of my favorite areas to talk about, and I have a little, nugget of information, right? So for the longest time, everyone thought gold, silver, oil were the most valuable resources. Surprise, time on this planet is actually the most valuable resource. So the ability to use technology to improve your health is a growing trend in the entire industry. And again, when you're talking about the bathroom space and even the kitchen, these personal spaces where you spend lots of time with your family and loved ones, if we're able to incorporate technology to improve the health of the consumer, that's an important use case. The fifth one is ecosystem. So we are all overwhelmed when it comes to choices as it relates to the smart home. And companies that have a winning model give you a complete ecosystem of products, right? Unburden the consumer from that experience of having to decide if things connect and play well together. Once you've bought into an ecosystem, know that there's more products for you to have as well. So these ecosystems that have the most complete packages are resonating well, and ecosystems that easily bolt on to others. The smart home is all about partnering and creating a holistic experience for the consumer. No one can own every space of the smart home. So we need to work together as organizations to bring the best experience for the consumer. And then the sixth one, this is a new one, but really impactful. So social connection while social distancing. That's a tongue twister there, but we're all, in our homes more. We're not seeing our friends and family, where I used to go out have a glass of wine with my buddies to wind down and relax. I'm not able to do that. So, Zoom meetings, team meetings, these, virtual social events, and even gaming is on the rise, allowing people to create new connections in meaningful ways that they never knew before. So the ability to still socially connect while we're social distancing is an important trend, and the smart home has an opportunity to improve that experience. Still in this macro trend space, I'm going to talk quickly about 4 development themes, right? So you heard the trends that are happening in the world and in the marketplace that are driving decisions for smart home companies. But companies are also having to understand the experiences they want to deliver as it relates to those. And the 4 I'm about to show you are not rocket science by any means, but they're important to keep these development themes in front of companies and in front of the end consumer to understand the experiences we're trying to deliver, right? So making moments throughout the day easier, simpler, automated, that's an important development theme. More delightful, right? So think about, performance showering, the ability to intertwine elements of aromatherapy and steam and water delivery and create this relaxing, delightful experience for the consumer. Very important. Safer, right? So safety throughout the home. You can think about safety from a security standpoint in terms of door locks and security cameras, but also in terms of thresholds, right? So in terms of our products, temperature thresholds, right? Making sure the water doesn't get too hot to burn your loved ones, to burn your kids, whatever that safety might mean for you, or even peace of mind in terms of water delivery and leak detection throughout the home. So safety. And the last one is healthier, right? So this progression from easier, delightful, safer, and healthier products really driving the experience. And again, they're not rocket science, but if you don't have those development themes in front of you and are conscious of them, you start making tech for tech's sake. So when I'm looking at a product or thinking about an idea for a portfolio, it better hit one of these development themes, and ideally hits multiple of these development themes to deliver an experience to the consumer. So that's a quick 10,000 foot of kind of what's happening from a macro trends in the world as it relates to smart home. And I hope you can see the tie into the kitchen and bathroom as well. We're going to transition a little bit into what's happening and then also consumer expectation, because those coupled together are really important to understand as we start to talk about our spaces here in a couple of minutes. I'm not going to read through all of these. You can read through the slide. But here are just some fun things that have happened over the last several years that show the speed at which this category changes, which means that speed at which consumer expectation changes. And that first one's my favorite, right? So back in 2007, Netflix delivered their billionth DVD, right? That was Netflix business model, was to send DVDs to consumers to watch a movie and then return it. Netflix probably hasn't sent a DVD in many years, right? So just to see the change in business model, to see the change in the consumer expectation and the services that are being provided around our periphery companies, right? So Netflix isn't necessarily a smart home company in terms of kitchen and bath, but it's changing consumer expectations, right? And the services they're able to provide. I like to talk about BlackBerry, right? So BlackBerry had no idea that iPhone was coming, and iPhone just blew right by them, right? So this leapfrog effect and the speed at which this industry changes is important for us all to understand. And then that last one there, right? So internet access wasn't a thing until 2001 and smartphones until 2012. And now everybody has one. If I come up with a product and 10 years from now, everyone has it, I wouldn't be on this webinar, I'd be retired. So that's the speed at which technology changes consumer expectation. And it's happening even faster now than ever, right? So in 2011, Nest launched, really changing the thermostat game forever. And in terms of insight for the consumer as it relates to energy usage throughout their home. You know, you can argue that the voice assistants, Amazon, Google, Apple Home are really the products that revolutionized and brought smart home to the forefront. Those only launched in 2014, but have completely changed an industry. We're talking about these products from a kitchen and bath perspective, right? And then, Kohler Company, we launched our portfolio of technology products for the bathroom in 2018, a space that no one really thought had any value as it related to smart tech. But you can see all of our partners and us as well, and our competitors for that matter, are bringing meaningful products to that space and delivering experiences for the consumer. So this speed at which we're playing, the speed at which consumer expectations change really drive the innovation that you see as it relates to the smart home space. But then it's also important to, make sure we're not moving too quickly, right? So keeping those macro trends in focus at all time, keeping those development themes of easier, safer, healthier, delightful in front of us, and making sure we're delivering products that really meet on the consumer expectation, but don't compromise it, right? So I'll be the first one to tell you that function cannot be compromised because of technology, right? So as it relates to our space, these better be great kitchen and bathroom products first and foremost. They better be able to deliver water really well. They better be able to flush. They better be able to turn on appliances in the kitchen and cook your oven to a specific temperature. And then technology gets bolted on top of that, but only when appropriate, right? So making sure we're delivering technology that amplifies the function of the specific product, but doesn't deteriorate from it. Design forward, right? So these products, more so than the Nest thermostats or the door locks, are fixtures and statements throughout the home, right? So think about a toilet, think about your kitchen sink, think about your refrigerator. Those are statements in your home. They need to be designed forward, and the design should not be compromised because of the technology. And you really want back to that calm technology notion we talked about at the very beginning. You want the design to lead and the technology to be in the background, just working in the background seamlessly, delivering that experience, but not overriding the beautiful design that's there first. And that really also lends itself nicely to design options, right? So that can mean styles, that can mean different finishes. That's something that companies do really well and succeed when they're able to offer a range of designs in complement to the technology, right? So it's not just a technology choice, it's a technology choice, but also a design choice, really giving consumers flexibility and how they want to build out their spaces, because that's what the smart home is all about, building it the way you want, because those spaces are so personal, right? And then obtainable tech, right? So a lot of the technology that gets put out there and gets the spotlight at CES or any of the trade shows is the flagship of people's portfolio, right? But we also need to focus on obtainable tech and affordable upgrades, right? So these simple solutions that allow consumers to upgrade their life without changing everything, and then allowing them to take these baby steps to start the progression, to start the understanding of their smart home and understand the features that make the most sense for them. So while we have this rapid speed at which the industry is moving, we also need to slow down and make sure we focus on these things, delivering meaningful function, meaningful designs, and obtainable tech for the consumer. And that's what really creates a winning model as it relates to technology products in the kitchen and bathroom space. Okay, now we're going to transition out of the top level, what's happening in the world, and we're really going to focus in on the kind of three key areas that make the most sense from a kitchen and bath perspective. And that would be bathroom, kitchen, and then whole home. And I'll spend 5 or so minutes talking about each. Throw your questions in the chat and make sure we can get into the details that make the most sense for you. But when we're talking about the bathroom space, think about the grooming space, think about the bathing and showering space, think about the toileting space, think about the whole environment we're able to deliver. When we're in the kitchen, think about the multimodal control, all the different things that we do in those spaces. When we're talking about the bathroom and kitchen, I like to remind everyone that the bathroom is really the place that you go to care for yourself and to care for your family and your loved ones. It's a very intimate space, it's a very personal space. You want to make sure the technology is delivering on those personal experiences in that space for that specific consumer. When you're in the kitchen, very different. The kitchen is the space, kind of pre-COVID and hopefully here again very soon, where you come to gather. It's where you come to share a meal. It's oftentimes where a party starts and where a party ends. So it pulls a lot of double duty. You want to be able to move throughout that space very dynamically, but also with peace of mind. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't also talk about the entire home after we've wrapped up those two spaces and the products that are being delivered in those spaces that tie into the kitchen and bathroom, but also bring the whole experience together and really deliver a full portfolio. Remember, back to that ecosystem approach I talked about at the very beginning, companies and products need to work in partnership with one another to really deliver an experience that makes the most sense for the end consumer. So we'll talk about bathroom. I really see bathroom as as stations, right? There are different stations that you move throughout at different times of day. They require different things for different times of day, right? So there's the grooming space. That's really the command center of the bathroom. It's where you start your day, it's where you end your day. This is where products like smart mirrors, touchless bathroom faucets really have an opportunity to shine, right? So standing in front of your smart mirror, what's the first thing when you do when you wake up? I check the weather, right? Is it going to be cold today? Is it going to be hot today? I check the traffic. I check the news. That's where I start my day. And the ability to have that information delivered through smart products like smart mirrors really allows consumers to efficiently start their day, right? But then at the evening, that space actually pulls a very different duty, right? It's a place to wind down. It's a place to end your day. It's a place to check the sports score. It's a place to turn off the kitchen lights, right? So the ability to have smart connected products in the bathroom at the space you are standing at when you start and end your day to control it and the environment that you're in, as well as the entire home, really makes the grooming space the command center, especially as we're talking about smart mirrors and the moments of convenience they're able to provide the consumer, during those duties. Then we'll transition over to the bathing and showering space. Very different than the grooming space. The grooming space is about efficiency, it's about information access. The bathing and showering space is all about personalization, right? My shower is very different than my wife's shower. Her bath is very different than our 3-year-old son's bath, right? So these are personal moments for that specific consumer. And they allow you the opportunity to be efficient, right? If you want a quick shower, et cetera. But they also allow you the experience of relaxation and personalization and what makes the most sense for you. And that's where, performance and digital showering really plays an important role, allowing consumers to dial up the moment that makes the most sense for them in that specific moment and give them that escape, right? So maybe I just got off the Peloton and I want to be able to, take a specific post-workout shower. Maybe I had a long meeting like this and I want to have a relaxing shower, or I know I'm late and I want to have that fast shower. Those are all personal moments that you're able to deliver through technology in the showering space and the bathing space, right? So think back to that safety idea we first talked about. Setting a bath temperature that's specific for my wife would be very different than that for my 3-year-old son, right? My wife's going to have a very deep, hot bath. My son's going to have a low, cooler bath, right? So dialing up that experience through technology and knowing that it's perfect for them and the experience that they want gives peace of mind, but also gives that moment of experience and escape, while you're in that space. And that's extremely important with the world we find ourselves in right now when we're all home more often. Having those moments of escape, inside the confines of our home is very important. And the showering and bathing space really shines in the opportunity to deliver that for the consumer. We'll transition over to kind of the third station of the bathroom, and that's toileting, right? So oftentimes an awkward topic to talk about, but it's something that we all do, and it's something we should be thinking about, top of mind. And technology really offers an opportunity to provide the most gracious and the most kind of customized experience that makes the most sense. I focus on comfort, convenience, and cleanliness, and trying to deliver those experiences as appropriate for the specific consumer. And it can be delivered in a host of different ways, right? So that goes back to the idea of building the smart home the way that you want. There are seats out there that allow for some of those experiences. There are integrated modules. There are complete solution intelligent toilets, right? So seats that have heating functions, that have integrated bidet technology, modules that allow for cleaning of the entire experience, that allow for touchless, complete toilets that bring all those experiences together. But again, we need to focus on those key experience of comfort, convenience, and cleanliness, and delivering that to the consumer and allowing the toileting space to do that and deliver that for the consumer. So that's where we'll leave the bathroom. I'm sure you have questions, so hopefully they're in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end, and we can circle back to any one of these topics. We'll jump over to kitchen space, right? So the kitchen is very different than the bathroom in terms of the types of technologies as well as the experiences that are being delivered in the kitchen, right? We still want to have gracious, we want to have, experiential moments, but the kitchen's about flow and gathering and products working well together, right? So there's this transition as you move throughout the kitchen, from your kitchen sink to your refrigerator to your oven, and these multiple pit stops, throughout the course of cooking a meal, getting your kids ready in the morning, whatever it might mean. There are these multiple pit stops you make throughout the kitchen. So this seamless integration of that space is really important. And I like to focus on kind of three areas that kind of come to mind. And the first one's water usage. And that means a lot of different things. The kitchen's one of the largest consumers of water in the home, with the bathroom as well. So we need to focus on quality, quantity, and safety of the water, right? I mean, that's obviously not rocket science either, but that's just an important thing that consumers are quickly, gravitating towards with, the push several years ago in terms of energy usage with Nest. Now we're looking at water usage in home as well as water quality and understanding how important water actually is to your well-being as a consumer. Hydration is important. The right amount of water is important. So the ability for products like faucets, kitchen refrigerators, whole home filtration systems to deliver that experience, especially in the kitchen, is impactful. And the kitchen's a fun place to talk about multimodal control, right? And this is the idea of giving consumers the flexibility of how to interact with the product when appropriate for them. So everyone knows what apps are. Everyone knows what voice control is. We know what automated control is. We know what manual control is. But how do we bring all those experiences together and allow you as the consumer to select the mode of interaction that's appropriate for you at that given time, right? So I'll be the first one to tell you voice control is great, but voice control is not great at 4 a.m. when my kids are still sleeping. So I need to have manual control still built in. And the kitchen is a space where that really shines, right? So you might have app control over the oven, which is great, but I want to have that manual control over the oven as well, especially to not be dependent on technology, right? So that goes back to that consumer insight of, making sure it's the right tech, but the tech isn't overriding the experience. Technology should not inhibit you from using any product. And the kitchen's a great place to, talk about that, right? I should be able to turn on my stove even when Wi-Fi goes down. I should be able to run my kitchen faucet even when Wi-Fi goes down. And that's the idea of multimodal control, giving consumers the flexibility to use the product as they see fit. My grandma shouldn't come over and not be able to activate my faucet because it's smart. She should be able to still use that manual lever. And then the kitchen's really the intersection of all of these products, but as it relates to the product, the person, and the home, like I said, as you're moving through this space, in my home, it's the kind of hub of our home. Like I said, it's the space you gather in, and it really allows for meaningful moments in the connection you see from technology to person. We'll shift over to whole home tech, and then I'll do a little bit of a close, and then we'll jump into questions, right? So whole home is really fun to talk about, and you can see the culmination of the entire, last, 15, 20 minutes, especially in the kitchen and bathroom space, but how it translates to the entire home. And it's an important space for us to understand as kitchen and bathroom associates is we are part of the whole home. We are not the entire home. We are part of it. So we have to understand what's happening in those entire spaces and translate that to our spaces as appropriate. So One thing that's happening is these immersive experiences, right? And that's around music and lighting. So the ability to move throughout a home and have the lighting react as appropriate, turn off in the kitchen, turn on in the bedroom, change to different circadian lighting. So cool in the morning, warm in the evening, different brightnesses, all of these different functions of lighting, really started in kind of the living room area, especially in that we were watching TV, but has spread to every part of the home, right? It's in our basements, it's in our bathroom, it's in our garage. So smart lighting has taken over. And then music. This is all about true music, right? So this experiential, playing my favorite jams, but it's also about information access, right? So podcasts, news, being able to stream that experience through multi-room control is a trend, and it's happening again in the whole home, but also impacting how we look at the kitchen and bathroom. The next one, so insights. This is my favorite of the whole home section. And this has really been a growing trend over many decades. And I really call it kind of the Fitbit effect, right? So no one really knew if 10,000 steps was a good thing or bad thing as it related to your health in terms of walking until Fitbit came around. And now we're all trying to get 10,000 steps. No one really understands what good energy usage or good water usage or good air quality actually means in your home. But now we're starting to gather insights, with whole home water monitors, with whole home air quality systems, with products like Nest and others that are tracking energy, water, and air usage. And we're really giving consumers insight into what's happening in their home. And again, with us being in our home so often, this is an important thing to understand the environment that you now live in. And consumers are bringing a lot of focus to these three areas. And this is important for us to understand as large water consumers with kitchen and bathroom products, and also air quality in those spaces and how we tie into the whole ecosystem. And then the last one, as it relates to whole home, obviously safety and security. And that can be as simple as, smart cameras, smart door locks. It can be as complicated as leak detection. It can be as complicated as, awareness in terms of security. But it's all about peace of mind for the consumer and really giving them the ability to have confidence in the products, confidence in the space that they're in. And again, how do we tie our products into that experience, again, with water delivery and temperature control, giving consumers peace of mind. So understanding the interconnection of all of the products is extremely important, especially as it relates to our spaces as well as the whole home integration. I'm going to leave you with a couple of nuggets, and hopefully Kevin hasn't answered all the questions in the chat and I can answer some questions live for everyone. But I'm going to leave you with a couple of nuggets that are really important to take away and think about when you're designing products, when you're selling products, when you're putting products in your own home, and making sure that technology is coupled correctly, right? So one, design first and foremost. Technology is not greater than design. Design is not greater than technology. They need to be working in tandem together. And that's something at Kohler Company, I hope you all have seen over the years. Design is a very important thing for us. And as we move into these technology products and as does our competition and partners, design is still important, right? It can't look like a silly tablet when it's in the bathroom space. It needs to look like a beautiful grooming mirror first and foremost. We need to make sure design stays at top of mind. The second one is, let's not forget about installation, right? So there are lots of hurdles when it comes to smart home. There's just like this comfort level with consumers to put these products in. I'm not going to get into the privacy and security concerns, but there are those concerns in consumers' minds. But let's make sure that installation is not one of those hurdles. These products can still be very simple to install, even though they have these great technology benefits. So making sure we keep a consistent installation across our portfolio. The image there is of our ReadyLock toilet installation. So it's a simple toilet installation on our traditional products that we're now also bringing to our technology products as well. So we can use common installation functions across the entire portfolio. The same goes for kitchen sinks, the same goes for bathroom sinks, et cetera. So making sure that installation is not a hurdle to giving consumers these great benefits as it relates to the technology with them. And then the last one, you know, this is about apps. I'm picking on apps a little bit, but it's also about the entire experience. Let's make sure that technology and apps aren't driving the portfolio. They are an addition to the portfolio. We still need to be living on the leading edge of design and technology as it relates to delivering great kitchen and bathroom experiences. And if technology has an opportunity to improve upon that, great. But if it doesn't, don't couple it on. I think you'll see that trend continue as the years progress. You'll see products that don't actually incorporate technology that still provide great experiences. So let's not get kind of blinded by this idea of smart home and think that everything has to have technology incorporated into it. And it's also this idea of offering ranges of experiences. So app is one experience, voice is one experience. There's also just simple automation and simple control that's really impactful as it relates to the smart home. So let's make sure we keep top of mind the great experiences we're trying to deliver with kitchen and bathroom products and in the entire home, first and foremost, and then couple on technology as appropriate to the conversation. And I'm going to close off there. I talked for about 30 minutes. I'm going to run out of air here in a second, but technology is moving at such an incredible speed. I think you saw that come through with the consumer insights. These spaces are being impacted because of the speed and consumer expectation that's happening everywhere in the world, not just in our spaces. So let's make sure we open our eyes to see what's happening everywhere as it relates to technology and smart home, and make sure we're reacting appropriately and delivering the best experiences for the consumer. So with that, I'm gonna pause, and I'm gonna ask Kevin to throw any questions at me that might have arose during the last 30 minutes.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you for the time as well. We had a couple great questions we were answering in the chat as well. One of them, a really great question to start out from Beth, asked the question here, and I kind of answered a little bit, but always good to hear out loud. As we look at smart home products, how are they affected if the electricity goes out, and which products rely on Wi-Fi, and how often do they function if the Wi-Fi goes out? So brief answer, Jonathan, I'll kind of let you kind of hit on that. We talked about our products, not needing Wi-Fi, so I'll let you kind of dive deeper into that. Running with options, some of these having that manual override as well. And then we talked about power backup, so generators as well as UPS units. So I'll let you dive into it. I did type a chat in there, but I think this is a good one for the team to kind of hear from you on as well. I'll jump into some other questions after you answer that one.
That's a great one, Beth. And thanks, Kevin, for the shameless plug for Kohler Company in the generator business as well. Always there to help with interrupted power supplies. But no, as the product owner for Kohler's smart home portfolio and our emerging category, one of my tenets, I think hopefully it came through in the discussion, was technology should not be the driver. If your Wi-Fi goes out, which is a reality and something that quite frankly I can't control, but I can be conscious of, if your Wi-Fi goes out, you better be able to still flush your toilet. You better be able to still turn on your faucet. You better be able to do that most basic functionality of the product. Now, I can't promise you're going to be able to use voice control when Wi-Fi goes out because it's dependent upon that, but I can still give you the most basic functionality until that Wi-Fi is restored, right? And that's what I think is really important and shouldn't get lost in the conversation as we're designing and developing these products is, there are things that we can control and things that we can't control. And the things that we can't control, let's make sure we design a better solution for the consumer. And if that defaults the product back to its most basic form for a certain amount of time, kind of so be it. And we need to be conscious of that. And that's one of the things I talk about our kitchen faucet line here at Kohler Company that does that really well. When Wi-Fi is up and running, when power is up and running, you have these great voice experiences. You're able to dispense metered amounts of water. You're able to dispense presets. You're able to use your app, all of these things. When Wi-Fi goes down, you're still able to use the product in its touchless fashion, right? So the ability to still have a clean interaction with the product, still a technology component. And when power goes down, you're still able to use the product in its default manual control, right? So there's these sequence of events that happen as things kind of break down in your home, but I'm still trying to give you the most basic functionality of that product when appropriate. Kevin mentioned interrupted power supplies, a great solution, kind of for our performance showering portfolio. And I think you see a lot of companies, do this really well as it relates to non-products in the core portfolio. Ovens still function even though Wi-Fi goes down. So again, that goes back to the idea of, technology should enhance the experience, but not drive the full experience.
Fantastic and great answer, Jonathan, as always. And I think a couple more great questions. We'll kind of dive into each one of these. There are some really good ones, you guys, so this is great. Keep them coming. The next great question from Julie. What space would be a great start off in terms of beginning to use smart home products? How do we jump in? How do we get on board? And what areas do you suggest for a consumer to start in smart home technology?
Yeah, that's a good one, Julie. I'm going to go back to a better opening slide just because I'm sick of staring at that white screen. But I think the simplest thing I'll tell you, and I tell people this in every conversation that I have, if you don't have an Alexa Dot in your home today, go buy one, or buy a Google Home, or buy an Apple HomePod. Go buy one. They're $29, and it's a great way to start to understand um, really a couple things. One, so we've really shifted how we interact with information, right? So we're kind of on our third or fourth evolution of how we get information, right? So we used to use click. We used to go out to the World Wide Web and Google stuff. We used to tap our phones and search things. Now we're just asking the environment a question and an answer comes back. So we're interacting with information differently because of these voice assistants. Excuse me. And then I'd say the second thing to couple on to start your smart home is a light bulb. And it sounds kind of rudimentary and silly, but that'll really start to show you how technology can change really simple interactions that you used to have, right? So I used to walk in the home with, 6 bags of groceries and struggle to flip on that light switch. I haven't used my front door light switch in probably 3 years. I walk in, I ask my voice assistant to turn on the light. It's a really simple experience that has been completely changed because of technology. And if those things start to gravitate with you, so voice assistance and access to information, control over very simple products, a product that we probably thought would never change. We thought the light switch was so easy, but giving a voice command is actually that much easier. Those things really start to drive the experience, and you're able to find what makes the most sense for you. And that's what the smart home is all about. Again, it's about a personal experience. So if you're using that light switch just to turn on and off, you've understood that you're really a rudimentary user, which is fine, but there are some great products you can add to that experience. But if you're dialing up at brightness, if you're changing colors, you're really into smart home, and you can start to experience smart home in a whole new way. And as it relates to our space, I'm going to have to give a shameless plug for our Moxie shower head, right? So it hits on a lot of different things if you're trying to build out your smart bathroom and understand what makes the most sense for you. It's a really simple installation. It's just a thread on, thread off of a shower head. It has that, access to those voice assistants to give you information control, and it actually functions as a voice assistant. So it allows you to control the bathroom space and control the whole home. So those ideas that I talked about with getting an Alexa or Google and getting a light bulb, the Moxie shower head is a really simple step as it relates to the bathroom space to start to build out your experience.
Fantastic, Jonathan. I think driving in with a great picture of that bathroom space to talk about those products highlights that overall room effect and that ecosystem we talked about. And I'm going to jump around. We're going to answer all the questions we have in chat. So if any of you throwing those in there, don't worry, we will get to them. But because we're on this trend, I'm going to kind of point Jonathan one direction, bring him back around. From a bathroom space to a kitchen space, we have another great question, and this really focuses in on the kitchen products. So two-part kind of question here, Jonathan. What's the number one product to recommend to a customer who's just getting into smart home, specifically when it comes to the kitchen, and also tied to that app? So giving that functionality, how does that work? And then I have a secondary question afterwards that I'll come back to once you respond.
Yeah, so I'll great question. I'll skip over. My first answer would have been the voice assistant, right? Because I have one in my kitchen. The kitchen's the space we gather, right? So once you've had that one, I think the next one I'd plug is a kitchen faucet, right? I think appliances are great, but I do think that they are a bit more of a long-term statement in the space. So I think you want to make sure that you're kind of all in on smart in that space before you take that step. I'm not saying you shouldn't take that step, but I think kitchen faucet really provides a unique way to understand, again, your level of need in that space. So I have one of the Kohler connected experiences in my space right here, and it offers that touchless control as well as that voice control. And it's a really simple installation. I mean, I think any of us can install a kitchen faucet. I did it. It's not too complicated. So it's a simple installation. It gives you a varying level of control, right? So you're able to decide what makes the most sense for you. And it's also a statement piece from a design standpoint, right? So we offer a host of different designs, again, as does our competition, right? So everyone's doing a similar thing, but giving you a way to simply refresh that space, add a bit of technology, and understand what makes the most sense for you in the kitchen space, and then build the experience from there as appropriate.
And Jonathan, I think talking about that control is perfect. What about app control and some of those voice commands that are really pertinent to today, especially with having to wash our hands so much?
That's a good one, Kevin, right? So like I talked about earlier, you were talking about multimodal control in the kitchen space, a lot, right? It's the ability to interact with the product in different fashions. Kevin teed me up there for a great one. These products have, voice control capabilities. So you can ask one of your assistants to turn the faucet on and off, dispense different amounts of water, virtually eliminating the need for measuring cups. But what's also great about these technology products is their upgradability, right? So us, as well as the rest of the industry, is focused on over-the-air updates. So providing updates to the experience over time, continuing to add benefit to the consumer. And as the impacts of COVID became relevant to the entire world, we actually launched a hand washing skill, right? So taking a product that we use to wash our hands and making it that much better. We actually implemented a skill that took you step by step through the CDC guidelines and the best way to wash your hands, that kind of turn the water on, get your hands wet, add soap, wash for 20 seconds, get your fingers, get your thumbs, get your wrist. And the voice assistant actually gives you all of those prompts, allowing you to give the best experience to wash your hand. But that was an upgrade. That was an update that we pushed free to the consumers. And that's one of the benefits of smart home products in general, is the ability to do that and to provide upgraded experiences over time.
Fantastic. And I think just to give Jonathan a moment, take a drink of water. I think these are great questions. I'm going to reemphasize one of the questions that did come in as we talk about power in the app and how can these fixtures or products function when the Wi-Fi is not working. As Jonathan noted, some of our key products have manual overrides. So you have that functionality to override that system and use it manually if the power does go out, or if you go on vacation, you have a secondary home that this product may be in, you can use that in a manual setup. And our products, as Jonathan will talk about, come with options via app, voice, and also that manual control. So you have really 3 working functions for the product. So great question. Just wanted to re-emphasize that as we had that question come back in. And I think a couple of the other really key ones, talk about that design of the space, right? Tying things together. Jonathan did a good job in the bathroom and the kitchen. But I think as we look at integration of those brands, there are a couple questions that come out to play. Can different brands work together via competitors of ours and others, and in the space, Jonathan, holistically, as well as looking at that smart speaker? How much does it listen to us? So 2 really great questions from the audience.
So I'll talk about the interconnection first, right? So there's a couple different ways to go about this, right? So talking about the bathroom experience, you can look at the bathroom experience as a complete solution, and having the complete interconnection within that space and making sure they all function together. That's important. There's also the connection to the entire home that we talked about and how we have products seamlessly interact. And I'll tell you, I think the best way to do that is to leverage these integration platforms. Control 4 is one of them. Amazon Alexa is one of them. Google Home is another one of them. What's happening is once partners bolt on to one of those experiences, they get this instant boost in connection to everyone else. And what I mean by that is if your lights are synced to your Amazon Alexa account, as is your shower, as is your smart mirror, you can control all of those products together through Alexa. So we need to leverage these integrators, Control 4 being one of them, again, Amazon, Google, IFTT being another one of them. We need to leverage them and bring all of those products together inside of those experiences and allowing consumers to connect that way, right? And not making sure we're not a barrier. So one of the things we keep top of mind at Kohler Company is I want to be as agnostic as possible. I want to provide a great bathroom and kitchen solution for the consumer, but I'm also understanding that you're not maybe going to buy all Kohler products. So we have opened our ecosystem up as appropriate to allow connection to other experiences. And that's what companies do really well in this space, is create an ecosystem of their own, but open that ecosystem up as appropriate to some of the other big partners in the space. As it relates to that question of, is the assistant listening? I want to preface this with a couple of things, right? So I don't like to get into the privacy and security conversation, but I'm happy to do it, right? So from where I stand at Kohler Company and the product manager of that space, I'll be the first one to tell you we're a 147-year-old brand. privacy is important to us. We've hopefully built consumer trust over that time. The bathroom is a very private space, right? So we understand that. These assistants are listening for their wake word, right? They're listening for that Alexa, hey, Google, mine's probably going to turn on here in a second. They're listening for that wake word, and that's the only time that they start recording. I'm also completely understanding that there is a bit of trust that goes along with that. And that's why, the industry is always keeping an eye on Amazon, Google, and Apple, and the rest of the companies out there, and making sure they're being honest with what they're saying and doing. But I'm also the first one to provide different experiences. If you're uncomfortable with that experience, I don't want to force your hand to have that experience. And that's where options come into play, right? So we have the voice assistant embedded version, but we also have a basic Bluetooth version that just streams music from your phone. So giving you the ability to pick the experience that makes the most sense for you in terms of the experience you want, as well as your comfort level with the technology, is really important to give the consumer.
Fantastic. And I think, Jonathan, we've had a couple that I'm going to kind of blend together, and then we'll come back to a few more. You guys are answering or asking some great questions here. But I want to divert back to kind of the power question that we talked about just a moment ago. And I think this is really important for consumers thinking about product technology in this space, making sure that app is going to work and that it's compatible, right? And you talked a little bit about compatibility and tying that together. But I think we get a lot of questions about power draw. What are the implications with power, and what happens if my product does go off? The Wi-Fi goes out, the power goes out. What happens when that power comes back on?
Great question. So I'm going to get on my soapbox for 1 second. If you're renovating or helping a customer renovate, remodel a kitchen or bathroom, put in extra power. These products do require power. That's a kind of a component as it relates to Wi-Fi, is this continued connectivity. But all of these products, not just Kohler products, all of these products, especially the great ones out there, when power goes out, they do kick off of Wi-Fi, obviously, right? Because Wi-Fi goes down. But they have built-in, memory that says, I know what Wi-Fi I logged in last time. And as soon as the product goes back onto power mode, it reconnects to that Wi-Fi, trying to create a seamless experience of, when power does go down, when Wi-Fi does go down, the product does unfortunately drop, but creating a seamless experience to get you back on to the Wi-Fi, right? So, in my home, if for whatever reason, my kitchen lights, the power gets turned off to them, similar experience. If the switch gets flipped, they don't work as it relates to Wi-Fi. But as soon as I flip that switch back on and give them power again, they reconnect, right? So it's this really simple experience for the consumer to understand when it goes down, it should reconnect. So you only have to go through that setup experience once as it relates to connectivity.
Fantastic. I think one other tied question to this, Jonathan, and this is really important, understanding, and I'm going to put a couple of these together, understanding products that use plug-in or battery power. Some people have noted they maybe have a battery underneath their kitchen faucet. Can you give a little explanation of the variation between that?
So traditionally, and not in every case, but traditionally, products that require Wi-Fi require a plugged solution because there's such a great power draw to stay connected to the internet. Now, that's not always the case. There are some, creative algorithms that can run in the background to change that experience. But for the general situation, Wi-Fi requires a plug. Battery typically is looking at a Bluetooth type connection. So we have some battery powered products in our space that, connect just through Bluetooth. So using a low powered Bluetooth state to provide a really similar experience to Wi-Fi in terms of app control, but through Bluetooth. Wi-Fi though is dependent and needed to deliver a voice experience. So that's where you start to see the difference. Now there are some leaps and bounds that are being made in battery technology that I think in the next several years will change that conversation. There are technologies, over the air charging, right, that allow for recharging of batteries wirelessly. So there are things that are happening very quickly in the industry that I think we'll start to see a shift where battery powered will become a more viable solution for all types of connectivity in the future. But today, for the most part, if you're looking at a Wi-Fi and voice experience, you're looking at a plugged solution. And if you're looking at a Bluetooth and basic control, you're looking at a battery solution. Again, there are some asterisks to that conversation in some special cases.
And this was a little tee up, Jonathan, because I led you with this one to throw the second one coming right back at you. I think this ties into a couple great things. One, apps and popularity. What is coming out? All these apps are coming, and are they staying and becoming even more popular? Is there an ecosystem to make it simpler for a user? And secondarily, with all this tech coming out, it can be overwhelming for some people, understanding what's new, what works together. Maybe what do I design in the space? How do I find out more about these smart home features and products for our designers and our friends here on the call?
Yeah, so I'll speak from my experience, right? So we have, Kohler has lots of resources as it relates to, we have a pro toolbox that gives information, to our partners in the world. We have kohler.com/smart home, always trying to provide the most up-to-date information as it relates to our technology products. And on to that app question, I think that there's actually been a really interesting shift over the last several years. Apps were a large component of control a handful of years ago, right? You would actually use your phone and use your app to control the product, to control the entire experience. Apps are really shifting more towards a setup, personalization, preset, configuration type of experience where they're needed for that initial conversation to get the experience set the way that you want. And then things happen automatically. They happen via voice, they happen via routines, etc. And you only really need to dive back into the app to fine tune, or if you want to do some type of super user experience. So apps are really changing the experience that they deliver to the consumer because there are so many of them. And there's this overwhelming experience of I have 100 apps on my phone. Where should I go to deliver the experience that I want? And that's back to that conversation before where partners like Control4 and Amazon and Google really make the experience interconnected with all of the products and all the different companies playing together.
Fantastic. Jonathan, we've had a couple really good ones. I think one more tied to serviceability that I'm going to hold for a second, but I want to ask this other one from Jennifer first. What do you think would be a minimum internet connection speed for Wi-Fi, say 2 people, gaming, watching Zoom meetings, need to start filling a bathtub for the kids' bath? And how do you stop buffering or lag time or glitches? I know this gets to be a big question with all of us as more tech gets in the house.
Jennifer, I was going to look up what Wi-Fi speed I just upgraded to. I don't know off the top of my head, right? So this is a great question, and it's something that comes up, often, but it's very specific to a couple of different factors, right? So there is a true proximity factor to this question, right? So how far away each of the products are, both horizontally and vertically. So Wi-Fi is designed really to go horizontally well, but not vertically so well, right? So think about that when you're having this conversation, and we can take this offline a little bit too. But so that's one component. So proximity. People oftentimes think that the number of connection points is impactful, but not so much as the proximity component. As you get further and further away, the number of access points becomes important when you're talking about the usage at a specific time. I could have 1,000 things connected to my Wi-Fi, but if I'm only using one at a time, it's fine. But if I'm trying to use all 1,000 at once, that's where the issue arises. So you have to think about this in a lot of different ways, specifically how you're going to use the space, and then location throughout the home. There are some products out there in terms of Wi-Fi boosters that allow you to amplify that experience. But one of the simplest ways to check kind of before you start to dive into this is, hook your phone up to your Wi-Fi, and there's Wi-Fi booster checkers, and you can walk throughout different parts of your home and see the strength of your signal in those specific spaces. It is certainly something to consider as we're talking about the bathroom, especially in terms of that proximity question, right? So oftentimes the bathroom's on the periphery of the home, and depending on where your kind of home network system is, that can become an issue, as well as the hard surfaces in a bathroom, right? So tile, not a great ally as it relates to Wi-Fi connectivity and boosting signals. So think about that in a dynamic way, and then there's experts that can help answer the question in terms of what Wi-Fi speed makes the most sense for you. But think about it in those different dynamic ways.
Fantastic. And I think Jonathan is just another highlight too, not one of our products specifically, but mesh networks where you can expand that, capability in your home. I know I have that in my home, and it works very well to break up all of those different connected components on a different mesh unit, but still using the same overall Wi-Fi connection and service to my home. And it really makes it a lot more fluid for everybody to stream and do their work, and kids and family at home. Really makes it easier. Something else to look into as well. Now, from a serviceability standpoint, we have a great question about how do we handle service calls related to technical issues?
This is a fun one, right? So I'll speak from my experience, specifically at Kohler Company, but it's not a secret to anybody else in the industry, right? You have to treat these products the same, right? We have to give the same level of service to the customer, but it gets really dicey in terms of, is it their Wi-Fi? Is it an Amazon problem? Is it a Kohler problem? Whose problem actually is it? And that's where this requires a level of technical service above and beyond what we've seen in the kitchen and bathroom space. And specifically, we're expanding our knowledge base as it relates to customer service to provide the most gracious experience when it comes to servicing these products, because it's a difficult question to answer. How come my printer stopped printing when I connected my shower? Now, that's never happened, but it could happen, right? So all of these things now interconnected means we have to look at serviceability at a much larger scale throughout the entire home, right? And what gigahertz Wi-Fi router do you have? How many things do you have connected? Jennifer's question earlier. All of these things now come into play when it relates to customer service. And we've taken the approach that we will do our best to solve every one of those questions and handhold the customer, even if it's not one of our issues, if it's one of our partner issues as it relates to the voice assistants, or if it's a Wi-Fi issue in the entire home, because ultimately the customer experience is what matters, right? And the product is delivering on that experience and requires those other things to function. So it really requires an entirely new thought process from a customer service perspective in the organizations that support those.
And Jonathan, to tie right off of that, we have a couple more questions. I know we're about 5 minutes to the hour. Debbie's going to step in here in a moment and give her closing remarks, but I wanted to tie these last couple of questions in, really relating to what you were just talking to. Are we getting to a point where tech integration specialists needs to be brought into the kitchen and bathroom models to make sure it's handled correctly? And when is that justified?
I think absolutely. Now, when you're talking about adding a faucet, maybe not. But when you're talking about the integration of the entire home, there are industry experts out there today. That's their job. I mean, Control 4 is one of them in the way that they integrate products. There are integrators related specifically to these voice assistants, and really hand holding customers that are uncomfortable, right? We don't want the smart home to be a hurdle, right? We want it to be an experience that delivers meaningful benefit to the consumer. And understanding how the interconnection takes place and gets set up is really important. So in my home, I have smart lights, I have a smart faucet, I have a smart shower, I have all these smart things. I have an entire Nest system. All of these things are interconnected. Now I know how to set that up. Not everybody does. That's where these integrators really come into play. And it can be at the remodel stage, it can be at the new home build stage, it can be at any point in reality, and allowing a customer to have peace of mind that they've set it up correctly for the experience that they want. There's some great partners out there that do that. The thing is, there's not really a national footprint of home integrators as it relates to the voice assistants yet, but I think you'll see over the next couple of years we start to see a larger national presence of a single company really taking ownership of that process.
And I think to add on to that, Jonathan, companies that do this well, companies that provide a lot of product like ours, have additional videos and resources that walk through a lot of those setup procedures. You can watch those. They're on the YouTube sites, pretty quick and easy to get to. Share those out. So that's another one of those learning curves. Plus, we have local experts and obviously our tech support line to help with that as well. So great feature set. And ask the question. I think no question is the wrong question, Jonathan. And I always say, if you have it, someone else probably has it too. So good questions, always ask those, and we can always help with support. Final question for Jonathan before I turn it back over to Deborah today. What is the future of smart home technology, and will it make our current appliances obsolete? Great way to end.
It's a great one. I think the smart home is here to stay, right? There is no avoiding that. It is here to stay. I think it'll be dynamic over the next several years, right? So you'll see companies offer more and more types of experiences, right? So app and voice really drove the smart home to where it is today. I think you'll see a shift, back to more just automation, touchless, these experiences that happen by themselves. And I think you'll see a really big shift in price point, right? We went from these premium products, we're coming down to these more DIY products. But I like to think that it won't obsolete what we have today. Again, back to what I think is important as it relates to smart home, specifically in the kitchen and bath, is these better be great kitchen and bathroom products first and foremost and deliver on that experience regardless of what happens from the technology. So you can buy with confidence that the product, even if the technology changes a little bit over the next decade, it's still going to be a great kitchen and bathroom product for the life of that product. So think about that. Remember that. Know that, myself and Kohler Company is invested in this space and the future that we see truly happening and the growth we see in this industry as relates to our spaces in the kitchen and bathroom. And with that, we'll pass it back to Debbie to kick us off.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Jonathan, and also to you, Kevin, for fielding all the questions, and Jonathan for this great presentation, and to all of you for joining us today. I just want to thank Control4 for their generous sponsorship for today's session. And again, I thank you, gentlemen, for all of you. It's great information today. Really appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.